The best piece of advice I have is do one small thing. You literally just need to do one small thing. If you are feeling stuck and you know your dream and you've done clarity and you're very clear on what your purpose in your dream is and you know where to go, all right, what's one small action?
Welcome back to the First Gems podcast, hosted by your favorite cousins turned co-host. If you're tuning in for the first time, this is where we celebrate the journeys of first-gen trailblazers who are leveling up in life, career, and creativity. Today, we are chatting with Jodie Taylor, a powerhouse in both corporate leadership and content creation. As a senior director of DEI and a social media creator, Jodie has mastered the art of the glow up from career success to personal transformation. I am so excited to dig into the conversation today. And thank you, Jodie, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Problem. Before we start, I know we typically like to do an icebreaker. We're going to keep it, pretty light today and just do some rapid fire Q&As with you, Jodie. So I'm going to ask a question and then just whatever answer comes to your mind, feel free to shout it out.
Sure.
All right. So first rapid fire question that I have for you is, what is your go-to confidence booster?
Oh, Alien Superstar by Beyonce.
Ooh, love it, love it. Shout out to
Absolutely.
Renaissance. Next is what is one habit that keeps you successful?
Failing is the habit that keeps me successful. I think failing is such an important skill and quality. Learning how to fail well, learning how to learn from it is the skill that I think is the most useful.
Love that. And another one is what would you say is the most underrated glow up tip?
Oh, most underrated glow up tip is I don't know if it's underrated, but I think for physical glow up, finding out contrast is something that I recently learned. So you want to aim for high contrast, meaning you want, for example, my hair color is really dark because it creates contrast because I have dark eyes and then also dark brows. Sometimes when you get too close to your skin, you kind of become monotone and you want to create as much contrast in your look as possible for kind of like that eye-catching look.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great tip. I just bought some jet black hair dye because I've noticed that. I'm like, I feel a little bit washed out and my hair is naturally dark, but I've noticed over time it's gotten a little bit less jet black. So that's actually a fire tip after these. Love that. Love that. Well, Gems, you're not escaping this icebreaker too. I'm going to ask you kind of the same things too. Or I'll just ask you, what is your favorite glow up tip? And I'll kick it over to Anna first.
Favorite glow up tip, aside from Jodie's glow up tip, of course. I would also just say like prints. I'm a print girl. I like wearing like African prints, things that go well with my skin tone as well. So that and some good sleep. Nothing beats good quality sleep.
Yeah, sleep is underrated. Kalaria?
For me, I'm big on what I put in my body. So water, I like to stay hydrated. And then I also started putting collagen in my coffee, the unflavored one. So I feel like that's a little, honestly, I'm not sure if it's made much of a difference, but I like to think it has. So yeah, definitely what I put in my body is my glow up.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, these are all so good. Okay, I'm gonna stick with the physical too. One glow up tip. It's kind of like, it's pretty simple, but when I go out as a finisher, I always spray on some like spray sunscreen on, and it just gives that glow. I always get compliments on, "Oh, you're just glowing." I'm like, "Yeah, sunscreen." But yeah, that's my glow up tip that I always like to do. Pretty simple, affordable, and yeah, I love that. Thanks, y'all. Thanks, Jodie. Thanks, Gems. So let's get into this discussion. Jodie, we would all love to learn more about you, more about your story and your upbringing. As we said before on the First Gems, we like to highlight, our guests' culture, how they got to where they are, because we know your upbringing, your culture are direct influences of what you're doing today?
Yeah, of course. I am Jamaican. I'm a first generation American, but everyone else in my family was born in Jamaica, like all of my siblings, everybody. So I'm the youngest. So I just by default was born here. So culturally, I grew up very Jamaican in the house, but my family immigrated to Massachusetts, like the suburbs of Massachusetts, which was very homogenous, not very diverse at all. Um, and so it created this like hyphenated identity where I was very American in some ways, like when I was at school, and then I'd come home and we were eating curry every single day
Mm-hmm.
for dinner, rice with every dish. There was no other starch. I did not eat soul food until I was probably like 21, like a proper American Black American food until I was like 21. So, yeah, it was a very immigrant. And Massachusetts, for those who don't know, is also a very immigrant place. So, I think a lot of people think there's no folks of color in Massachusetts. It's mostly, if there are, they're going to be Haitian, Nigerian,
Yep.
Dominican. So I grew up in a very diverse, well, the folks who were diverse were very diverse culturally. Um, so I think everyone can relate to like the immigrant upbringing where it was very strict. It was very strict and very religious. So I did every single activity. I did piano. I did ice skating. I've done dance. I've done rowing. I've done lacrosse. I've done math tutoring. I've done chess club. Anything you can think of, my parents had me in it. And it was really interesting. And I think that is really foundational to who I am today. And that a few things. One, they really prioritized academic excellence. So it was incredibly important for me to like really like sort of overachieve in a lot of ways, which is how I ended up in corporate. I became a senior leader at a corporation by the age of like 27, 28, like leading an entire department. And I think that was really ingrained in me from my family. And then also I think I really feel like I have a joy for life. If you follow me on any content, I'm always like, I'm trying this activity. Like today I just went to salsa class for like the second time because growing up
Oh,
I was always encouraged to be curious and like try things and do things, and if I don't like it I can try something else. So I think that was also an integral part of my upbringing, is really having the space to like try and do things, which I thought was really exciting, and it's enriched my life so much. Like I have learned salsa for me is an exercise around like being less cerebral and moving into your body, because once again, as an immigrant child, like we are always thinking and on and doing and achieving. So salsa for me was an opportunity to be less cerebral. I've done, oh my gosh, I've done Spanish classes where I've been able to like connect with people abroad. I've done tennis lessons where I was able to like make friends with random girls in Brooklyn. I've done so much, and it enriches your life so, so much. So I say all that to say my immigrant background has certainly helped me on like the academic and achievement perspective, but it's also really helped me be curious about the world, and really just like try things on for size and see how I like them.
Yeah, I love that perspective. I feel like a lot of times we hear the opposite sometimes, not on the academic end, but just the being courageous to try different things, especially when a lot of times you may be discouraged from trying things that are non-academic. So that is very notable that you had such a
Well, let me be clear. My parents were still, everything that I did was to put on a college resume. They weren't like,
right.
yes, girl, like try being an art director. They were like, you're going to Spanish class so we can say you take Spanish when you apply to college. And
Mm-hmm.
they were thinking like that when I was 8, like I took the SATs for the first time when I was like 10. So I,
Oh my
I
goodness.
love my parents and I want to give them all the credit, but like the reality is everything that I did, I would be like, oh, I don't like this. And they're like, okay, well, we're putting you in another extracurricular activity. So yes, yes, but also, you know how immigrant parents are. Everything is
Mm-hmm.
for the plot, and the plot being college and a job.
Yeah, and if
Yep.
they don't see that pipeline, they're like, "Why are you doing this?" You
A
almost have to
hundred
do
percent.
things after you've already succeeded in it
A
for them
hundred.
to get
Yeah,
it.
100%. 100%. I mean, my family was always pretty supportive of social media, but once again, it wasn't until like people at church were coming up to them being like, oh, we love that they were like really behind it. So yeah, it takes them a while to get into some of, especially like creative endeavors. They are not always the most supportive of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Oh. I remember hearing, I think you were on Balance Black Girl,
Mm-hmm.
and you were talking about how even with your upbringing and being in different spaces and places, you realized very early on that a lot of information was siloed. When did you realize that, and how did you navigate that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the biggest punctuating moment for me was when I went to my first job out of college was at a nonprofit.
Mhm.
And I had worked in finance like when I was in college. And so this job was helping students of color get into finance jobs. So a Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, bulge bracket banks,
Mm-hmm.
working in investment banking. And I remember seeing these applicants, these students come in, and the difference between them getting, and this was back in 2013, 14, so about a decade ago. So think with inflation. Students getting like a $200,000 entry level job at 21. The sole
Mm-hmm.
difference between them getting it and not getting it was they knew what color suit to wear. They knew like how to answer a case study. They knew which organizations to be a part of. They knew to join the consulting club at school. And so I remember seeing that disparity and saying, your entire life, and there would be some students who were like, oh, this club was giving free pizza away. So I stumbled in on it. And then it was a consulting club. And then I realized, oh, you can make money from consulting. And then I became a consultant. And now I'm a partner at a consulting firm. And now my life is forever changed, right? I make $1 million a year. That to me just felt so, I mean, it was really eye-opening where it can just be one happenstance occurrence that can totally change the trajectory of your life. And so I really think working in that role, and once again seeing students with the exact same resume or very similar resumes, but one student just knew the right thing to say in the interview versus the other one, or like wore the right color suit, or knew how to introduce themselves with more gravitas. They're now making $200,000, and then the other student is going back home, and now like working at like a fast food restaurant or whatever it looks like. And that it's like something as simple as that.
Yeah.
And it was just
Mm-hmm.
information, it was just knowledge, it was just having that experience. No one student was smarter than the other per se. They just had access to information. And when I was 19, I had interned in New York. Um, I interned at a like multicultural ad agency, but a lot of my friends were in this program called MLT, which is Management Leadership for Tomorrow. It basically helps college students get into really competitive career fields. And I remember sitting there and being like, oh my God, these are Black and brown folks making so much money and like living in New York and living in these beautiful big apartments. And,
Mm-hmm.
we were like 19 years old at the time. And I had no idea that that existed. And so it was a happenstance summer. I ended up applying to an internship very last minute, which is how I ended up in New York City that summer. They placed me in New York that summer. But that forever changed my trajectory, right? Then I started working at an organization similar to MLT. Then I knew I wanted to live in New York. So, in short, I think these experiences were seeing like the almost, like having those moments where I'm able to see literally two candidates in front of me and seeing one go back to their regular lives and then one step into an entirely different life, moving to New York, making all this money, having all of these connections can literally come
Mm-hmm.
down to just access of information. Did they even know what color suit to wear? Did they know how to interview prep? And that was really profound for me. And I remember feeling like, that shouldn't be fair, though. Quite frankly, it was a lot of bias that was being regurgitated.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, it was students whose families had worked in investment banking, so it was kind of just this ongoing cycle.
Yeah.
And I wanted to interrupt that. It was really important to me. I've always been really passionate about communities and communities of color. So it was really important to me to democratize that information. So that's why I started social media. I also have a master class that I teach, and I bring women along on the journey with me. We cover everything from physical to social to career. And I really just share the knowledge that I wish someone told me when I was 22 or 25 or 27. Like, join this group. Think
Mhm.
about this when you walk into the room. How do you introduce yourself? How do you leapfrog in your career? physical and beauty tips. Here's how to build a capsule wardrobe. Stop spending all of your money, at these fast fashion brands and actually start investing in clothing that makes sense. Stuff I just wish someone told me. So that's how I really started getting into like sharing the information outside of those silos.
And that's how, is that what sparked you getting into DEI?
Yeah, so I would say I think my background was also really important for me working in DEI. So because I had lived in such a homogenous suburban town in Massachusetts, I also knew deeply what it felt like to be lonely and the only one and like the only person who looked like you. I think it was like three Black girls in my entire school. Um, and it was not fun. It was traumatic in a lot of ways. And so
Mm-hmm.
I remember feeling like I want other young folks to know that this is not what it has to be like. It's not what it has to look like. And I know how much it would have made a difference. I mean, my first job out of college, um, like right out of college, right before I went to the nonprofit, I was once again the only person of color that I would see for days. It was Fortune 500 in the Midwest, and I could go days without seeing anybody that looked like me. And that sort of wreaked havoc on your confidence, on your psyche, showing up to work and kind of being like, no one looks like me, no one's advocating for me, they weren't that nice to me. How different could my life have been had I had someone who looked like me, who pulled me aside for a coffee chat every now and again? So that, I guess, service has always been that, and my background heavily informed me going into DEI.
Yeah. And with all the recent regulations, I'm just curious, like, what it's doing to the industry and if your role has been affected, or if, or what advice you have for people working in DEI and what they can do to navigate this impact.
Yeah, I would say I can't talk about my role too much, but I would say it hasn't impacted my role, quite frankly, at all. My advice for folks going into DEI is making sure that you have like transferable skill sets. As somebody who's worked in DEI for most of my career, there's so much that goes into DEI. There is recruiting, there is retention, there's strategic work, there's data analytic work, there is succession planning that you can do, making sure that you're not only focused on like employee resource group work or programmatic work. I've had the ability to work at organizations like startups or nonprofits where you have to do everything. You have to be the lawyer, the communications team, the recruiter, the talent acquisition, the talent development. So, because of that, I've had to really develop a diverse set of skills. And so, I would encourage folks who are interested in DEI, the names might change, but the concept will always exist. And I think everything is a pendulum. I think eventually things will swing back. I think sometimes we correct and overcorrect and correct and overcorrect. I do think at some point, DEI as we know it will come back and there will be a need for those skills. But in the interim, making sure that you're staying flexible and knowing, like having a robust set of skills to support. So if you end up moving into firmly an HR role, you also still have those skills.
Love that. So yeah, just kind of thinking more too about the fact that you have such an accomplished professional career, but you're also popping on TikTok and social media. Like, how are you
Yeah.
kind of like also just balancing the two? And do you see um, your career kind of like stifling content, or do you see like vice versa? Like, how do you kind of navigate that too?
Yeah, honestly, I could use better balance. I feel like it's really both have sort of taken off at the same time. Thankfully, corporate I've been doing for quite some time, so I'm able to sort of like I know how to manage that. I think it would be even more overwhelming if I was like in the punctuating moment of my career. I reached senior leadership like 5 years ago, so now I'm firmly there, and I feel good about
Mm-hmm.
being there. Thankfully, I mean, I've seen a lot of commentary about people being like, I cannot post. I don't have that. It's never been an issue for my job. I also think I work in music, so I do think people have robust social media presence in this industry. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but in terms of balancing both, I try not to let them compete in that I try and inform, like, if I'm a part of a mentorship program for work, some of the learnings or like the aha moments that I have there, I'll bring to social media. Like, oh my God, I just had this brilliant moment because I was having a conversation from something at work. So obviously, like, no proprietary information, but I think the key to balance is social media will always exist for me, work will always exist for me, family will always exist for me, friends will always exist for me, social life will always exist for me. How can I find as many synergies between all of them as possible? Like, how can I invite my friends to work events if that me so now I'm attending work event and fulfilling my work commitment, but I'm also being able to spend time with my friends? How can I let my friends or work inform my social media? How can social media be a conduit for more time with my friends and family? So really thinking about the ways that I don't allow things to compete with each other, but more so be synergistic has been helpful in me really cultivating that balance.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a really important nugget just to think about even when people want to build businesses. A lot of people have
Mhm.
side jobs, but then they might like be interested in another completely different industry and just kind of like being able to find the synergy, even if it seems disconnected, like trying to find the thread where it can connect so that's like your time doesn't feel completely
Exactly, as
separate from
constrained.
each other.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so in just stalking your TikTok, I did notice that you talk a lot about growing up,
Yeah.
designing your life, and just empowering women to embrace, the life that they want to live. So I feel like the whole concept of manifestation kind of got popularized with Be
Mhm.
Simone. Do you think there's a difference between like designing your life and manifesting it? Because I feel like designing sounds more tactical to me,
Mhm.
but manifesting kind of just sounds more like spiritual, I guess you could say. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
what ways do you think that they're connected or not?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think they are completely connected in that I don't think you can design your life, or you can't. I think they like, I don't think you can design your life without the concept of manifestation. I don't think you can manifest a life without the concept of design. Meaning, so if I want to design my life with intention, there are going to be some parts of that life, if you're designing it well, that are going to be stretched, that are going to be aspirational, that you might not exactly know how you're going to get there. For me, manifestation doesn't always feel so woo woo. It feels like I know I want this thing, and I need to start creating inspired action to go then get this thing or acquire this thing. I know I want a promotion. I may not understand how I'm going to get that promotion, or I want to have $1 million year this year with my business. I don't necessarily know how I'm going to get there, but I need to start creating and up leveling my self worth to feel deserving of that, and then also taking inspired action to get there.
Mhm.
So that's how designing your life and manifestation, I think, kind of play a part. Similarly, you can't manifest without doing the work behind it. So manifesting is like, I want this thing. I feel deserving of this thing. The designing part comes in and says, okay, well, here are the steps that you take to do it. So I think they're one and the same. And I think a lot of this journey for me started off, I listened to like a lot of manifestation podcasts and a lot of law of attraction. And I fundamentally believe in all of those things. Like, I believe fundamentally, and I think it's been proven scientifically. You begin to attract the life that you think you're deserving of. I love this book called Psycho Cybernetics. I owe every single podcast I go on, I talk about it.
Yeah, I was
But
reading
it's
this.
yeah, it's so good. But the reason why I love this book so much is because the author was a plastic surgeon, and
Mm.
he would see people's lives like dramatically change. Like, one person was a car salesman. He gave the car salesman a nose job, and after that the car salesman's life like completely changed. Like, he got married, he started making 3 times as much money. And like, it's a nose, right? At the end of the day, this is not like fundamentally changing your life. But what really happened is he started seeing his life differently. He started seeing interactions between people. Like, if someone were to talk to him, he no longer was self-conscious, so he viewed every interaction as positive. And then his actions and his self concept began to inform how he saw the world, and the world met him there. Like, he then, if someone, maybe turned away from him in a conversation prior, he might have been like, oh, it's because I'm so ugly, blah, blah, blah. If someone turned away from him now, he was like, oh, is there a way I can engage with this person again? And it just opened so many more opportunities. So I firmly believe that you get the life that you think you deserve. And so that's why it's really important to me to continue this manifestation journey.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, that's wow. What was the name of that You said it was
It's
a book.
called Psycho-Cybernetics. So psycho, Psycho, cyber, like cyber, and then Psycho-Cybernetics, Netics.
Okay,
Wow.
we'll add
Have
that
Ooh.
in the edit
Yeah,
so
have
that.
you read Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself? I'm reading that right now.
Oh, I haven't. What is that about?
Yeah, it's by Joe Dispenza, and it's
Oh,
basically about like the science of like attraction and how your mind can literally change your reality.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, I haven't gotten too deep into the book yet. I'm still like almost to the middle, but so far I like when spirituality and science meet each other because it
Yeah,
kind of everything that people think is like very woo woo and like, oh, this is fake or whatever, like for those people who actually want data, like there's data there,
yeah,
and
yeah.
being able
Mhm.
to kind of like put those things into perspective and actualize it, like yeah,
100%.
I think you'd like that book too. I've heard good things.
I'm gonna check it out. I do like Joe Dispenza. He has another book, Supernatural,
Mm.
that people really love too. So I'm gonna check it out.
Ooh.
Becoming
Mm.
Supernatural.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
adding
So
all this to my Goodreads.
Mm. Anatomic Habits, I finished that last
Oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
last
it's a
Atomic Habits is
classic.
good.
yeah.
um so just going back to the whole manifestation, designing your life conversation. I've always felt like God puts things on our heart because they're meant to be on our
Mhm.
heart. So it's kind
Yep.
of like up to us to execute on it. Um, in what ways, and part of it too, I think goes back to the whole idea of this zone of genius. Like it's a very like intuitive type of
Mm-hmm.
thing, but also reflective. So can you maybe kind of just talk about some advice that you would give other people trying to identify their zone of genius, or maybe kind of like conflicted and not really sure, how to go about finding it for themselves?
Yeah, I think what you said is true around, God, whatever folks believe, God, but
Mhm.
spirit, universe, whatever. Put in your heart is there for a reason. I think sometimes we kind of gaslight ourselves into out of believing that it's like worth it or like a valiant effort. I posted about zone of genius, which is essentially like your zone of like a very specific zone that only you or a few others can operate in. So I give the example for those who aren't familiar. Zone of genius, we all have different zones. We have a zone of incompetence, which we're all very clear, it's you suck at this thing. Then you have a zone of competence, which is you're fine at it. Like you'll be a average person in that role for a very long time. Zone
Mhm.
of competence, or no, zone of excellence is where a lot of people get really stuck because it is the zone where you'll probably be really great at. Like you'll probably have a great life, a great career, but you'll live like just a great average life. Like it's not going to be an extraordinary life, but it'll still be really great. And then the zone of genius is where that is like an extraordinary life. You are completely tapped in. So, an example I like to use is John Legend. He was a consultant, like he was at a top consulting firm. He went to a
Mhm.
great undergrad. He probably would have done really great. He would have been a great consultant, great at whatever he did, but he would not be a Grammy award winning, the John Legend that we know today. He would not be an example of anything, right? He would just be great. Similarly, Oprah, similarly, Julia Childs is someone else that comes to mind who all had careers before that where they were very good at, but now they're operating in their zone of genius. So I say all that to say, for the folks who are confused about zone of genius, sometimes, like if you were to break down, John Legend, he's this like insane consultant. He went to University of Pennsylvania. He's at like Bain or BCG or McKinsey, one of them. And he's like, oh, I want to write music. At that time, it probably seemed, a little insane. Similarly with Julia Childs, oh, I really like to cook. I think sometimes we gaslight ourselves out of what we're really good at and what might actually be your zone of genius. So if you feel something on your heart, it probably is that. So I would say one, listening to your intuitive. I've also seen in the comments like someone was like, oh, all I'm really good at is like connecting people. And I'm like, the CEO of Virgin Atlantic, like this massive billionaire CEO, Richard Branson, has said, my only skill is connecting people and like being able to spot potential in people. He's not like he claims he's not like this insane businessman. It's just being able to know like, oh, this person seems like they're really good at their job. They should talk to this person. So I say all that to say your zone of genius takes time to discover. There's all of these assessments you can take. You can do inventory. You can figure out what people compliment you on, what you get advice when people ask you for advice. What are they typically asking you for advice on? Um, and that's ways to figure out your zone of genius. But intuitively, I think most people know what it is.
Yeah, I think I know what mine is, but I'd be gaslighting myself. I'm one of those people.
Yeah,
Like,
I think a lot of people do it.
yeah, but I also think I have like a severe case of imposter syndrome. Like, I just be feeling like I don't have, the skills that I should in order to reach the level that I want to. So then I'm just like
Mm-hmm.
going in my head about things, but
Yep.
I'm
I,
working through it.
I mean, I
Yeah.
hear that a lot. I work, like I said, I have a master class and I have a lot of young women, young Black women who are really talented, or young women of art. Actually, I work with all women. And that is the one thing that they always say. Like they want to do something, but they don't have the right qualifications. They don't have the right skills. They need to work a couple more years. They want to get another degree and another degree before they start it. And it's really crazy because you can look at them objectively and be like, wow, these people are working at some of the biggest banks, the biggest firms, they went to the best schools, or they're just inherently talented people. Like they don't need any more schooling, they don't need any more experiences. Um, and so, what I encourage them to do, especially in the class, is like you need to just run and fail as many times as you can because the harm of just like getting more schooling or thinking you need more qualifications is you're not getting information and you're not getting data. You want to fail as many times as possible so you can get clarity quicker. Like you want to be able to discover like, oh, I thought my zone of genius was XYZ. I tried it. I did it a couple times. I actually hate it, or I'm not that good at it, or I need to get these skills. But you'll never get that if you just keep turning your wheels in your head.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that ability to bounce back and pivot is honestly my secret sauce.
That's the best skill to have.
Absolutely. Gosh, Jody, you speak with such clarity and depth. Like I know that so many folks who are listening, and even the gems on this call, like we are just soaking it all up. So goes without saying. Just want to thank you for that. And especially, the gems, we're also corporate girls. So everything is not lost on us. And I feel like just with your story and some of the gems that you've already shared so far, like there's just so much to relate to, and that's including if you're not in corporate. So just thinking about more to your coaching expertise and with your masterclass, what are some key habits that you would recommend for maintaining that momentum to, progress and succeed both in career and personal growth?
Yeah, I would say in terms of maintaining momentum, one is figuring out your intention. I think oftentimes people want to do things just like, for example, content creation. There's a lot of folks who want to do content creation for like fame or like influence or power or recognition, which is like there's nothing inherently wrong with that, but you will burn out faster because one bad video, one bad week, you don't get signed, you don't do this, and now you're like, but if your intention is to be of service of people, or if your intention is to just like let people know information, or if your intention is like, hey, I really like these things and I just want to share it and I don't care if it goes forever or a couple days. So just being very clear about your intention. And it should always be like a self-honoring and like in service intention. Because that's how you get burnt out, is like always if your metrics are validation, you're going to burn out very quickly. So that is one tip I would say in terms of burning out. The second tip I would say is honestly, I don't think a lot of women of color delegate enough. And so that's like a really tactical tip I would leave a lot of folks with. Like I think we're very used to just doing, doing, doing. And I was able to observe the habits of a lot of like my mentors who are extraordinarily successful. And they delegate everything. They are going to have someone, they have assistants, they have teams, they have, you know, chefs and drivers and nannies and trainers. And it doesn't always have to be an expense, right? You can get, I've used trainers that literally cost like pennies on the dollar because they were virtual and we just logged into Zoom, or, you know, you can get coaching for free. But I really, really, really encourage people to start thinking about delegating and offloading some of that stuff to people, because it frees up your time and capacity in order to like for you to pour back into yourself. So I think delegation is a huge pro tip that I think more women need to lead on. Like you can get a assistant overseas for, you know, a couple like a couple, less than $50.
Mm-hmm.
So figure that out. Use that.
Absolutely. I need to start applying that right away.
Yeah.
Wow. Tanina, I think we're ready to end off with these gems.
Yeah, I feel like the entire episode, and I know you coined the phrase Jodie's gems on TikTok,
Oh,
and definitely,
Yes.
yeah, you are definitely the perfect person to have on our pod. At the end of every episode, we typically drop gems for the listeners. I feel like this entire episode was a gem.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
what more? What more? No, I'm just
right, right. Yeah. And it also gives an opportunity to kind of showcase the things that we've learned from our guests too.
Mhm.
So we'll go around and say a gem that we've gotten from you
Mhm.
as well. So leading question would be, hmm, what gem would you give a listener who wants to level up either professionally or personally, but is stuck? Like
Mm,
but stuck in a way where they've reached their, I think you said zone of competence. Was that?
mhm, mhm.
Yeah. They're there, like they're competent and they're like, they're content, but it's like they want more, but they don't know where to kind of turn.
Start.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's like tactical things. So there's something that I love called the wellness wheel. And the wellness wheel is a tool that was given to me by one of my coaches. If you Google wellness wheel, it will come up. It's essentially this wheel that is all the quadrants of your well-being. So it's family, it's life, it's relationships, it's work, it's money, it's uh, finances, it's social life. And you go through and rate each of these on a scale of 1 to 10. And anything below a 5, you write out the reasons why. And that really gives you just clarity. I think sometimes when you're feeling stuck, the first thing that you need is just clarity. Why am I feeling stuck? I think sometimes we just get so stuck in the emotion of it. Um, but the reason why you're feeling meh might be, you know, as innocuous as you haven't spent time in your community or with your friends, you need to reconnect with them. Or it might be, oh, actually, I've been in this job for 3 years. You know, it's fine, but I'm actually not really being challenged. And sometimes when you actually write it out in that systematic way, you get that clarity, and it also helps you from feeling overwhelmed, because sometimes we're like, oh, I have to overhaul my entire life and I'm stuck and I want to look better, feel better. It's like, no, sometimes you just have to start at like point zero, which is what is like one small step I can take to start feeling better. And you can't do that until you identify what that issue is. So I would say that's one. I really like Atomic Habits. Once again, I think there's so many gems in that book around creating systems and structure. So you don't even have the capacity to like get like truly feel the burnout. I know a lot of folks have like goals around losing weight. The author James Clear talks a lot about creating systems and structures to help you get there. That could be meal prep, that could be laying out your workout clothes the night before, that could be, you know, getting a gym membership in your building. So all of these things that help you get closer to your goal, which remove you from like the effort of having to think about all of these things. So I would say that's it. And then the last thing is like things in motion stay in motion. I think oftentimes when we are in a funk or we are like, I just don't know what to do, sometimes you can just kind of stew in that. And the best piece of advice I have is do one small thing. You literally just need to do one small thing. If you are feeling stuck and you know your dream and you've done clarity and you're very clear on what your purpose in your dream is, but you don't know where to go, or you know where to go. All right, what's one small action? So once again, in my masterclass, I will have the ladies do one small action, like posting a video announcing the business that they wanted to start for the first five, for the last 5 years, because it prompts them to make an action that they otherwise wouldn't have taken. And otherwise, they would have just stewed in like, I want to start a business. I want to start a business. I don't know where to start. No, we're going to announce that you're starting a business. Now you have to take action. So
Yeah.
I would really encourage people to like take action on things.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing, amazing. I actually have listened to that TikTok where you talked about the wellness wheel, and I
Mm-hmm.
did it, and I definitely recommend. It definitely prompted me to think about things more in depth that I wasn't thinking about before.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely love that video that you made on it, and I suggest that people go look at
Awesome.
it and do it. One gem that I picked up from you is during our talk today, you talked a lot about like it's really just belief in yourself. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
don't have that as your foundation piece, you're gonna feel stuck. You're never gonna feel like you are deserving of the things of great things in your life. So start with inherent belief in yourself. Get books, listen to podcasts. Like if it's not that easy for you, get resources to help you kind of
Mm-hmm.
shift your mindset and get you to that starting point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, yeah, so for me, I really love that little glimpse that we got of your Jamaican upbringing because a lot of what you were brought up on is how you are today in the sense of like your parents instilling that curiosity and taking action and trying things. Like I feel like you also exude that and you encourage that now and even in your life now. So I think like just for anyone who might be stuck, just to stay curious, try things, fail. You're not going to be great at everything,
Mm-hmm.
and just keep it pushing.
Love it. That's awesome.
Mhm. Yeah. And just to wrap it up, I really feel like the big piece here is just like a really minor thing of just focusing on building that mental tenacity. I think a lot of it is mind over matter. So that first step just starts with believing that you could do it.
Love that mental tenacity. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. So many gems were laid out on the table today. If you listening, I hope you picked up 1, 2, or 3. We gave like 100. So you have a lot to work with. Thank you so much, Jodie, for joining us here on the First Gems. And yeah, if you have any projects or anything or where people can find you on socials, feel free to drop it.
Yeah, you can find me on TikTok at Jodie K Tay, which is Jodie Jodiek, as in Kimberly, and then Tay Tay. And then also on Instagram at the same thing, but with an L at the end. So Jodie K Tail at the end.
Love that. Where can people sign up for your masterclass actually?
Oh, yes. So I have a newsletter that if you follow me on socials, it's going to be in my bio, but it's also jodiektay.com. And you'll be able to see the newsletter sign up there. So JODIEK Tay.com.
So the masterclass is different from the newsletter, or they're the same?
So they're different. So the newsletter is free. I send that out every single month. And then the masterclass is a group of women. We're looking to expand it. This past winter, we had about 13 women go through it. It was our first cohort. We covered different topics: physical, social, and career. We also bring in experts. So I brought in a stylist, I brought in someone, a venture capitalist, and we have them come in and just talk to the women and give them gems that you have homework, you have a final paper or a final presentation. So it's like a class. It's a
Ooh,
glow
I
up
love
class.
it.
You might see me up in there. You know
I
what?
know, literally. I'm like,
Hi.
let me sign up after this.
Yeah, I'm
Get the
probably the
gems.
most likely going to sign
Come
up for sure.
on.
I love that. Thank you so much again for joining us. Thank you, Gems, for tuning in, listening in, and until next time, bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.